Tonight, however, with no further ado, we have a man that needs no introduction, and therefore not get one. It's Rene!
I don't know why you want to talk about friends. I hate people. So tell Austin to go home. How is everybody? Good. You ready for Christmas? All the gifts are wrapped and ready. Right, Mickey? Come on. Really?
We got a new altar. There's no time to wrap gifts. You didn't.
But they just built you a new altar.
Oh, Smoke, did you hear what she said to me? You didn't have to build it.
But you know what they say, if you build it. Anyway, well, it's great to be here again. I hate the bridge. That is, you know what a besetting sin is? Is that which you do that you know you're not supposed to do, but you do it again, and then you say, well, I'm sorry for having done that, and then a few hours later you do it again. Okay? My hate for the bridge is my besetting sin. I say I should not hate. It's an inanimate object. It had nobody asked it if it wanted to be that way. So, you know, just let it go. But then every time I look at it, it just begins to change me. You know. Anyway, okay. It's great to be here because it's been a while since I've dealt with this topic as far as a presentation is concerned. Deal with it personally in having a spiritual life. Having a spiritual life is not anything new. In the Hebrew theology, it was body, mind, and what they call soul. Okay? So we do a lot with bodies. Okay? There are multiple gyms. There are sections in the library, and I made a point of going to half-price books, and there are 5 3-tier bookcases on either personal growth or make your body beautiful or something like that. And then for theology, Bibles, and all that, there's only 1.5. Okay? It makes you wonder where the interest is. Okay, so we pay a lot of attention on that. And then also we pay a lot of attention about how to be better, more proficient, know how to make our minds work better. Now, when it comes down to spirituality, we say, well, you know, we don't really know what that means. It's a name given to something that we don't know much about. And when, in the American mind and culture, we do not know much about something, we tend to leave it alone, tend to move away from it. So I'm asking you to open a little bit yourselves, not that you haven't already, and I know that many of you here have a quite active involvement in some of the areas I'm going to talk about, and that's great because, again, you lead by example. So, but open yourselves up to the possibility of learning a little bit about that spiritual side that we sometimes don't cultivate enough. Okay, so I learned a long time ago that we each have a tendency, a way in which we approximate, get closer to our spiritual life. Okay, first and foremost, we're all in a lifelong journey to union with God. We're here moving towards union with God. And we have to get into some training, some practice to get to that union, to get to that contact. Okay? And there have been many people for many centuries that have looked at what are the different ways in which we can do that. Okay? And they've come up with different spiritualities, Ignatian spirituality, Franciscan spirituality, and so on. Now, in Western spirituality, which is us, I want to share with you 3 different ways in which most of us fall in an area in which we approximate, we get close to that spirituality, to union with God. Okay? I'm not going to ask you to raise hands, so feel free to think about where do you fit in these. Okay? Some of us like to think about things a lot. Okay? Look at the picture of the plan of the church. Right? Some people will look at it and will think about what it looks like, will think about the numbers, will think about the little arrows, and somebody will say, what do you think about that? And they say, let me look at it for a while, I need to think about it. Okay? They're reflecting on it. So it's a reflection. Some people reach spirituality through reflection. They want to think about things. They will read a chapter of a book, and they will stay with that chapter until they think about it, they process it. Okay? And we do that for other things too. The other general group is the one that's called substantive. And those are the ones that do things. Their spirituality is in doing things. I've always used this example, and I just told this gentleman that I will tell you about, a former senior warden of mine at St. Barnabas in Garland. And St. Barnabas had their 60th anniversary last Saturday, and it was great. I was fortunate to be there, and so was the first rector at St. Barnabas in 1958. And anyway, and it was a big whoop-de-doo, and this former senior warden was there, so I told him that I keep telling stories about him because I learned a lot from him. And but when you saw him, he pretty much needed to be left alone. The man mowed the yard for the church, the man trimmed the yard for the church, the man edged every corner, and would not talk to anybody while doing that. And it was not that he was being impersonal and antisocial, it was that his spirituality, his approximation, his coming together with God meant that he needed to work in God's house. And that's what he did. Okay? Some people find that closeness with God by doing things, by being active, by following through when Jesus told the disciples, now you go and do likewise. Take action likewise, meaning I've taught you something, now go and do it. Put it in motion. And some people will do that. Others will think about how it is that they're going to do it. Others are already jumping in and doing it. Okay? A substantive looking at that will say, you know, that's going to be great because people are going to be able to come in here and then they're going to be there and that's going to be facing that and then the sunshine and they work it all out. It's being done already in their minds. Okay? And the third one is one that is affective, the affective person. And that is the person who is moved by the idea of worship, music, poetry, reading. They see that as a sign of God's house becoming larger, more people singing, the choir being bigger, and they see things that way. They're affective persons. They feel their way through their spirituality. So any one of us can be any one of these. And it's okay. I was told by my spiritual director, it's okay if you're a doer, because I am a doer. You know, how many times did I step on toes around here trying to fix things that weren't my business? You know, and that's just who I am and how I do things. I walked into the, Vicky will know this, I walked into the sacristy at St. Michael's last week, and there is a candle lighter. And it has a little tag on it, won't burn, wick stuck. Oh, come on. You can undo it. Oh, don't just write it down. Fix it. After all, when you fix it, you light a candle, and where's the candle go? Next to the altar. What's the altar? That's where God is. See, that's a doer. So you move along, and you want to do that. A reflective will say, I wonder if they used the right thickness of wick to be inside that brass tube. We ought to measure that and maybe look at it from different angles and see if that will work, you know. And the effective person will cry because the candle cannot be lit. We will fall somewhere in there. Not that clearly, okay? But we will fall in there somewhere. That'll be our tendency, and it's okay. We can think about God, we can do God, we can feel God, and that's okay. And sometimes we go from one to the other in only, one time, okay? I like to be inside the minds and the hearts of this congregation next Sunday when they come and they face the new altar and the new lectern. I wonder what will go through their minds, okay? So, don't know. One of the things that, as far as I looked at word in the will, is the will to pray. It's a conscious decision for us to spend time in conversation with God. Praying is not a monologue, although sometimes we fall into that trap. A monologue with God. You know, we're not Johnny Carson telling God jokes. We need to engage God in a conversation. And sometimes that conversation means we need to be quiet, to listen to what God is saying to us. And sometimes God will use other things to let us know that He's heard us. It could be a sentence in a sermon. It could be the beauty of the lighting and the altar. I still have a picture of the last Christmas I was here. And the candles are lit and poinsettias were there, and it's more than a postcard. That's where God is. So we are moved. We are engaged, if you will. And sometimes we need that engagement through silence. And for some of us, silence is horrible. It is terrible. I am one of those. In the Diocese of West Tennessee, the gentleman priest who came up with the idea of contemplative prayer led a clergy conference. And it was okay when he was doing the didactic teaching, but when we got into the experiential stuff, and then we all had to sit and become comfortable and breathe, and then we're going to read a verse from a psalm. And we read the verse from the psalm, and then we were supposed to meditate on it, silent. That was about as long as it took me. Read the psalm, and it says, okay, let's move on. What else can we do? So my legs started doing this bit. And my assistant at that time, Karen, was not shy at all, and she slapped the hell out of my thigh so that I would be still, because she was a contemplative, which is the main reason that I asked her to come and help at St. Elizabeth's, because we were different, and she could address some of the needs that I could not, and I could address some of the needs that she could not. Okay? So we're all in this, in a sense, together. So, but this conscious decision to pray, to read, to journal, a lot of people have gotten a little bit away from journaling, to attend a class, to carve out the time. Again, it's a decision of the will, to carve out the time to go to a class, to break the regular monotony and go to a class, and also to seek spiritual direction. That, again, is something that is out of our will. I will to do this. I am going to do this. Give you a point, in case. When I was in Memphis, assisting at a church in Collierville, right outside Memphis, I was responsible for Monday through Thursday morning prayer. Monday through Wednesday morning prayer. And the rector took Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So I got into a cadence. I got into a rhythm of the prayers, of the reading of scriptures. We did it with the liturgical aerobics of morning prayer. You stand up, you sit down, stand up, sit down, and it keeps you awake. Part of it. The monks needed something to keep them awake. You know, they drank all that port wine that they prepared, and they needed to get up and down so they were awake. And I lost that cadence when I moved to Dallas. I was too busy. You had to move, you had to empty boxes, you had to find you know, your medical network has to be set up, other things, you have to find a barber, you have to find a mechanic, so there was no time. It was like saying, God, you sit over here for a while and I'll come back and get you, okay? Don't go hungry or thirsty, but I'll come back. And then I was able to re-engage that when I started working as canon to the ordinary of Bishop Lambert, because I realized that I had lost the cadence. I was a little bit without a rudder, and I needed to concentrate on the presence of God. So I started doing that, and I would do it. Here's where the will comes in. When are you going to do it? Think of your time of the day. When are you going to do it? When do you have 30 minutes if you're going to do morning prayer? There are several modalities I'm going to go over. But if you're going to do morning prayer, give yourself 30 minutes. Where are you going to find 30 minutes? I was not finding it when I was getting up, Nancy was getting up, and the dog was running around and all that. But I found it when she walked Jethro. There was nobody else in the house. The walk would be 20 to 30 minutes. That's when I did morning prayer. So I had to figure that out after some frustration, you know, because she'd be coming in the den, and she did not know what I was doing, and she'd say, I'm going to go walk him, and it was like, okay! I was in the middle of the psalm. So, where do you find the time? Finding the time is very, very important. Where do you find the place? In Memphis, our home was built in an unusual way, and it had a covered patio further on out towards the backyard. And there I would go in the mornings with a cup of coffee, and back when I used to smoke, and I'd sit out there and do my morning prayer. It was a different form of morning prayer. It was not with my prayer book, not with my Bible, but it was a different form. And then it became even more important when our son Chip ended up going to Iraq. Then it was, our days were turned around. My morning prayer was asking that he would have a good night's sleep. My going to sleep prayers was that he would be protected during the day, because the days were turned around. That spot was the special spot. It was the only spot where I could pray. And it was not mine. I shared it with people. Nobody knew, but that's where I did it. So it was a very special place. Other times, you may find space and place, any place in your house. It may be in your car. Somebody asked me on Saturday after the service at St. Barnabas, I had not seen him in a long time, gave him a hug, choir member, and he said, "One question for you." I said, "Okay." He said, "Do you still count the Hail Marys on the back of your steering wheel?" And I said, "Sometimes I do." You know, steering wheels have little bumps in the back. And sometimes I did not have time to pray, especially if you go see somebody in the hospital at 5:30 in the morning for a 6 o'clock surgery, and you stay there. By the time you get in your car, it's kind of like, I haven't even said hello to God today. And I would do a form of my prayers, you know, the Lord's Prayer, then I would do 3 Hail Marys, and there was, 1, 2, 3, and then, yeah. So, and I told him, yes, I sometimes still do. But there are different ways of doing praying. What would you say would be the benefit of a prayer life, benefit of a spiritual life, benefit of a rule of life? You can't use those terms, rule of life, with teenagers. Too many rules. But we would ask kids after happening, what is your Christian lifestyle? What do you do to be a Christian? What do you think about? What is your Christian lifestyle? So I ask you, what is your Christian lifestyle? What would the benefit be of you having a Christian lifestyle where prayer is involved? What I think is that you're going to find that there is a rhythm to your life. There is a cadence to your life. There is a peacefulness to your life. Now, I'm saying this to you, and you're wondering, would I ever get that? Well, how can you find out if you do or you don't? You need to try it. And you need to work at it, spend time doing one thing or another. Maybe I'll try this, maybe I'll try that. Give yourself a little bit of time trying each one of them. Do not do the mistake that I made when I was going to be the most prayerful, perfect seminarian that God had ever seen going through the halls of any school. I was going to do morning prayer, noonday prayer, evening prayer, and compliment. And I'm going to do all the readings at each one of them. It lasted 3 days. I can't keep that pace. No way. No way. And I've always found out that it's easier to start slow and then add things rather than take everything and then as you start dropping them off, what happens? You feel horrible because you're not keeping your promise to God. Okay? So start slow, add things to it. Okay? So let me share with you some of the different ways, or what I would call different modalities of prayer. One, and because it is Advent, seasonal devotionals. Okay? I'm going to show you 3 that we have at home. And this one is 05 and 06, Advent and Christmas meditations. And it's every day. It has a meditation in it. Okay? And it has antiphons, readings, and so on, questions about scriptures, and so on. That's one style of devotional. Then this one is Living Well Through Advent this year, and it's a Living Compass seasonal resource. And again, it's the same. It's a reading and a meditation, a chance for you to read what somebody else has written about Advent and then wonder, do I fit there? Is my life like that or not? What if it were? Why can't it be? Would I like for it to be? No, yes, and so on. This is something that Nancy and I have been involved in several years, and that is St. Michael's has these Advent meditations, and they ask people to do a meditation. So according to however many days they're in Advent, different people write a meditation for that day based on the scriptures of the day. Okay? And these are lay people. There's some clergy. Sometimes, I think there are only two clergy this year, myself and Eric Lyle. Yeah, Eric is right there. He had December 14th. And so Nancy wrote one. She didn't like the scriptures. I said, tough. You know, that's what happens to us when we, something for Sunday, we go, oh no. So that, but anyway, what I like about this is that it is the mind, the heart, and the eyes of the lay people looking at Scripture and commenting on that, and their own experiences of walking through Advent. And it is not what I would say, more polished, theologically correct, done by trained people. There are some interesting insights when lay people write meditations for that. There are others that are been around forever. God Calling. This was written by 3 nuns, and is their way of talking about, for instance, January the 7th, the title is The Secret Pearl. Look upon us with thy favor, O Lord, while we behold the land that is very far off, and yet so near to the seeing eye and the listening ear. And then they write about that. So God Calling has been around for a long, long time. And then my favorite, which is trashed a little bit, since it's used quite often, and it's Listening to Your Life by Frederick Beekman. And it is a wonderful way that he writes. He's a very unusual writer, but it has been a source of peace, a source of understanding, and also a resource for teaching and preaching. Because if you look at the date of the Sunday that you're going to preach, there'll be something there to jump out at you. So daily devotionals are a way of doing that. If you want to say a couple of prayers and read a devotional, and that's your prayer, fine. That's your prayer time, that's fine. And you don't have to do any more than that. Again, starting small and building up. The other one, like I mentioned, morning prayer. I like that better. I'm more Ignatian. The doer likes to move from one book to the other and flip pages and all that. And it took me a long time to figure out that. I think it's page 158. In there, it tells you which canticles to do which day of the week. And my anal retentiveness was so happy when I found that page, because then I knew that on Wednesdays I do Canticle 16, and it just put it all together for me. Okay? Being a doer, that's good for me. Also, it gave me a chance to go through the entire Psalter once a month. If you look at the Psalter, flip through, and then you will see the date. It will be, you know, the first, the second, the third, so on and so forth. It only goes 30 days. So on the 31st, write your own. You could probably. But that to me is what attracts me in my spiritual life and my rule of life to do morning prayer. And then again, you can always ask for help. Anybody that is doing morning prayer will be more than happy to sit down with you and say this, you know, go to here, go to there, and so on. It's very, once you know what to do, it's very, very simple. Journaling. Journaling. There was a period of my life that journaling was extremely important because I was able to express the pain, the fear that was in my life on paper, and I could put it there, and I knew it was there. I could go back and look at it, which I did at times. I would go back and say, oh, that's where I was, but I'm not there anymore. Okay? Journaling is something that we have taught young kids at camp and young adults at other retreats. It is a way in which in their development they don't have to tell anybody about anything, but they can write it down and they can express themselves on paper. Make sure that if you journal that you make it very, very different from anything else at the house. Don't use a legal pad. Okay? Go to the store and get something that, you know, you can write. Well, here's. Okay? So that's part of my journaling right there. And use a book, a different book. This one was given to me. I'm not a flowery person. I know. But anyway, but still, it has a history definitely to it. So, you know, do that. But get something that when you look at it, you say, that's my journal. Not that's a piece of paper that I used to write somebody's phone number that I did not know ahead. Some of you have been involved in Lectio Divina, and that is the reading of Scripture and meditating on them, of looking and seeing what it is that the Scripture is telling you. And Nancy has continued to teach a class. We do not know what the future of that class will be because the lady that started it over 15 years ago died suddenly last week, and we had the funeral yesterday. So I do not know if someone's going to replace Gloria, and Nancy has been helping her and assisting her in that. So, but Lectio Divina has been around forever, and this was really part of the monastic life where they would study Scripture that way, by reading it and then meditating on it. What is it saying to me? How do I read it? And you know, things like getting in touch with the sounds and the smells of the time, if you will, of the text. So that's another way. One that is, I found and still find to be extremely powerful for me is an added worship. Nowadays, when I don't have to be anywhere some Sundays, I still try to find a time to go to church. I'm not the protagonist. I'm not up there doing things, and you're not looking at me, or anybody's looking at me. I'm sitting in the pew, and I'm doing pew things, and worshiping, and being able to do that. I believe that that is most important for those of us who've chosen the path of serving God as ordained ministers, but also for you, because you have accepted to serve God as ordained minister by your baptism and confirmation. So if you're involved in ushering, choir, whatever, taping sermons, whatever it is that you do, you may want to find a time where you go and you simply worship and you're not doing something in the service. Maybe, that may be it. Something that's been lost in the shuffle is a visitation to the Blessed Sacrament. That's the original formal title. And we have a reserved sacrament here. We have a light. And if you remember 2 years ago, we were able to get the light from Jerusalem. And we're having that light. That means that the consecrated bread and wine is still present. And that is, if you look at Orthodox theology, that is the pinnacle of the presence of God among us. It's in the bread and the wine. So it's in there. Go in, kneel, sit, be quiet, talk to God, and listen. That's what a visitation is. How I learned about this was that in Cuba, we would go to Mass every Sunday morning, obviously, with my parents, and then we would go home, and while Mother prepared lunch, my dad would go to one of the old missions in Old Havana, and he would do a visitation. Now, I'll say this to you now because I know what he did now, but back then it's kind of like, where's he going? You know, he's not going to the Air Force Base, the medical clinic is closed, so where's he going? So I asked to go one time, and then from then on I went with him. And he would go and he would kneel in a pew by himself. There was no services going on. And I'd sit there and piddle and look for spiders and kick the dust around because it was dust. It was dirt floor with the pews, old pews, stinky pews. And then when he'd get up, it was time to go, and then he'd give me a quarter, and I would put it in the poor box. And I learned that discipline. You know, and to me, it's what a relaxing time. Especially, just think of your life right now. It's a go, go, go. How fast can I go? My computer is not working because it's not fast enough. You know, my phone, my this and that, you know, all that, you know, here I am complaining about the traffic and the bridge and all that. And this is a time to say, okay, I'm going to carve out some time to be alone with God and pray and do whatever. I've seen people enter the sanctuary and, you know, with a quick, and later on you go in, they're asleep. They're probably the best sleep they've ever had in a long time because they're just in God's arms right there. Okay? So visitation is important. You know this church will be open. You know you can come. If you think your time is kind of odd, talk to that guy over there with the vest and say, I need to come in and pray. And it will be open. Okay? So that, make yourself available for that. And then last thing that I want to bring up is the rosary. I joked about the rosary, but I was brought up with that spiritual tool, and unfortunately, as I look back, it was imposed on me, and it was kind of pushed on me by the Christian brothers. And so how many rosaries have you prayed this week? And it was like, 5. I just sinned. I lied to you. I didn't do anything. But it was when I found out the beauty of it, when I found out the calmness of it, when I found out about the mysteries of it, then it became a beautiful thing to do. There's also the Anglican Rosary that has less beads, and that's quite all right. Bead counting has been around in many, many faiths for many, many centuries. one of the things that Chip brought back from Iraq is a set of beads that not only the Sufi ministers, to call them that, Sufi priests, have with them, but they are sold in the market. And a lot of people will walk around with their hand in the pocket, and they're just doing the beads in the pocket. Beads have been around for many, many years. Again, that is something that does not take much to learn how to do. And I was very fortunate that I had two families at St. Barnabas that were brought up Roman Catholic and wanted to have that opportunity to do the rosary. And so we started doing the rosary at 6:30 on Wednesday evenings with 7 o'clock Healing Eucharist. And all of a sudden, there were just 5 of us that started it, and then all of a sudden, you know, it was in the 20s and in the 30s. Because people took an opportunity, carved out the time, they willed to go and check it out. So what I want to leave you with, before you ask questions, is take the time, carve out the time, make the time. Nobody's going to give it to you. Nobody's going to give you the time. So make the time available for yourself to grow spiritually through prayer, through meditation, through beads, whatever it seems to be the thing that attracts you to being closer to God. Okay? Any questions, comments? Any of you doing Lecture Divina right now? A little bit? Okay. Have any of you been introduced to the Rosary in your previous life or in an Episcopal life? Okay. Morning prayer. Okay. Now I know some of you have different groups here, and do you all take time to pray together in that group? And you know, I know the Cursillo format. I know that has the prayers in there. So yeah, do take the time to do that in your groups. So anything else that I leave out?
I'll make one comment too. It's interesting that you're talking about this as far as being part of the will. I picked up a book, really skepticism, thinking I hate it. Thought it'd be just some Christian kitsch. And it's actually quite good. And it's about prayer, and she says the same type of things. It's you make your habits. And one thing that she mentioned was, because you said certain things that prompt you, like the book or whatever, but the things that prompt you to do it, and the things that prohibit you to do it. So that scientists have said that first 7 seconds, that when you start out to do something and you get distracted, that those first 7 seconds are really key. So if you have your coffee ready to go in the morning in a lap blanket or something like that, those prompts to get you to do it. Also things that would prohibit you, like if you put your cell phone away at a certain place away that you can't hear it or whatever, it also aids in that. But it's very similar to what you were saying as far as prompting yourself and the will, you know, mending the will or bending your own will towards something different and working towards that habit.
I had to figure out where to sit and then to do morning prayer.
Yeah.
My lazy chair has been wonderful when I've had all my bionic parts installed, but that's not the place to have books. So it had to be the couch, the corner of the couch. I'm right-handed, so I needed to have the table on this side. Of course, a cup of coffee right there, and then so it had to be there. But the big problem is that I'm facing the television, and the television is on while Nancy is getting ready to walk the dog. So I tried muting it, but as I'm reading, then you get this, and it's like, no. So I had to turn it off. So you take the, but if I did not do that and say, okay, I need to set this up,
Yeah.
you know, it's sort of like a pre-flight check, you know, check, if I don't do that, it's not gonna fly.
Yeah.
So that's a very good point you bring up. Yeah. It's setting it up so it'll work. Some of you have heard about Brother Lawrence and some of the writings. This is the practice of the presence of God, and it's by Brother Lawrence, and it is in the format of letters, and it is just a very neat give you an example. We must, Brother Lawrence remarked, trust in God and surrender completely to Him. He will not deceive us. Never tire of doing even the smallest things for Him, because He isn't impressed so much with the dimensions of our work as with the love in which it is done. So that's just, again, this would be, could be a devotional, it could be something that you were to add to your prayer. So you do the St. Chrysostom's collect, and then you add one of these to it. So anyway, this one I was introduced to by my sweetheart Nancy, and it is a beautiful, the way it's written, and these are the prayers. It's called The Prayers I Love by David Redding, and they're very simple prayers. Some are you won't find them any other place. Let not my mind be blinded by more light, nor faith by reason added lose her sight. So anyway, and this is, and I know that Nancy has used some of these as part of her presentations at time as handouts for you know, breakout groups in doing that. This one is new, and I have not tried it, but I'm about to. I just got my coloring pencils,
Oh, no.
and it's called Praying in Tongues. And
Is this an example of many tools?
yes, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, examples of other prayer icons. Okay, for instance, chapter 8, yeah. Sybil, her husband was the rector of Calvary Church in Memphis, and she's a go-getter. She's a little firecracker, and I mean, she's little. So she had this idea and began to put together, and she ended up being very encouraged to write it, put it down in writing, and to organize it and all that, and she did. So this is a way of concentrating, a way of praying also, and so I did get my colors, and I got a pencil sharpener, which is, went in the store and asked for one. The lady looked at me and said, "For what?" I said, no. Anyway, I did find one. So unfortunately, it's battery operated. So anyway, but that's also a very you're engaged in expressing yourself in a prayerful way, and it is again another tool, as it was said a minute ago. So, anyway, okay, yes, sir.
Something you said struck me, and I hope it'll stay with me the rest of my life, and that is that you said prayer should not be a monologue. Be quiet. And I just want you to say more about that, because I really want to understand that. I mean, I think I know what it means, but maybe could you give me a tool to, I know that's asking a lot, I shouldn't be doing that.
You're gagging.
No.
You're wrong.
Think of it this way. Taking one of your favorite musical pieces, as you are a musician, play it and don't talk. Don't hum it. Just play it. Listen to it in silence. And I know that doesn't make sense because you got music on. Listen to it in silence. Okay? And see what it says to you.
Thank you.
Because I can rattle off a rosary, and if I do it because I got 15 minutes to do it, and by golly I got to do it, which is the way I learned to do it in the Roman Church, which is not good. That's why I pushed it away. Didn't do it until later, much later. It doesn't mean much. But when I say a prayer, sometimes, not all the time, sometimes in a way I'm transported to this place where that prayer is. I still think that God has such a sense of humor that He lets the three of us consecrate bread and wine. You know, and it's, you know, when you say the words, you know, you're there, you're in the upper room with the good guys and the bad guy, and you give communion to everybody like Jesus did, and then you're quiet. And one of my favorite times of the year is coming up, and that is driving home after the latest Christmas service. And like here, it was unbelievable because I had 25 miles to drive home. There wasn't anybody out there. Everybody was home. And I was there. And I'm rocking along. No radio. Where you going? You know, no radio. And it's just a wonderful opportunity to let all your senses fire up. You know, so using silence means you stop talking, not necessarily music or, in your case, and I'm bringing up case for you, the music for you, Dennis, because I know how good you are. And I think that that would be a way of doing some of the listening. You know, even if you know the words, when you offer that to God, the words will tell you something different. Anything else? Any other comment? Insulted anybody? No? Losing my touch. Yes, dear.
I found in visiting in hospitals and homes, forward day, but I always
Yeah,
carry a
forward day by day.
by day,
Yeah.
large print for
Mhm.
them. And it's amazing how many people did not know that it even existed. And it has been a comfort for them.
Right, right. And what I like about Forward Day by Day is that it is written by different people, not all collared
Right.
theologians. So I remember one time I was in Memphis, and one was written by a prison chaplain, and all the readings had some sprinkling of real events that he had to take care of while he was in prison ministering to people, and that was powerful, very powerful.
And one you haven't mentioned, and I know in our Paseo reunion group, and I have not partaken of it yet, there are several members receive something on their cell phone every morning. You know, like, similar to that.
What's a cell phone?
Scripture.
No, there are a lot of apps, absolutely.
Right.
There are a lot of apps.
So, I mean, it depends on
Oh, absolutely,
what
absolutely. So,
works for
no.
you.
Yes, what works for you, yes. Yes. I'd rather not be that electronic. I'm still a dinosaur, so Yeah. But no, that's true. And if it works, the thing is, if it works for you, keep it, do it. The only the only exclusion from that is this. If you're going to read a book, somebody tells you about a book, please check with your rector or your spiritual director to see if they know about the book. There's a lot of junk out there. A lot of junk that is misleading, and you don't need to read it. Okay? But if, you know, and I know that I've been approached before, and I said, I have no idea what that book is, but let me write down that, and then I go research it, and I'll come back and I'll say, you know, it looks like good stuff, or throw it away.
Can I add something to that? There are a lot of times that there will be a book out that will be on the negative, in the negative category. But if we look at it from an open standpoint, from an objective standpoint, and not a standpoint that this is fact or this is whatever, if we can be critical of what the contents are,
Yeah.
then, you know, we can possibly get a whole lot out of that book.
Herb, that's good, you know, but not
very easy, but
no, but not everybody has the ability to read something and say, I'm so anchored in my belief that this book is not going to affect me. You know, there was a group that got into the church, infiltrated the church, I don't know how to say it, with a lot of secular information, and one rector of one church in Dallas really got very interested in that style of secularism, and he basically had the largest majority of his congregation going along with that, and the bishop had to have a little come to Jesus talk with him.
But still, we need to learn to be critical.
Oh, yeah.
Because we are responsible for what we do. Like, I'm not responsible for what you do, but I'm responsible for
You're
what
not?
I do and what I believe.
No, I agree with you, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah. We need to be able to do that.
Another tool that I have found over the years, if I can, is walking the labyrinth,
Oh, yeah.
particularly if you can't sit still.
Mm-hmm.
We have one that's out here that it's very silent, and it's exactly what you say when you have.
Absolutely. We introduced, in Memphis, there was what was called Winter Light, and it was the time between Christmas and New Year's, through New Year's Eve, where young people really had nothing to do except get in trouble. And so we would go out to the mountains of Tennessee at a camp, and we would spend time doing camp things and group building things and all that. And in one year, the leadership of the young people said, we want to know about different ways of praying. So one of them was the labyrinth, and we were able to borrow one from, actually it was a hospital. And that was, the director was an ordained Methodist minister, and they had a fold out, it's a canvas labyrinth, and we put it out in this huge room, and what we added to it was a Tibetan gong to give you the okay to enter. Because they would want to crowd up and bunch up, and no, this is kind of an individual thing. So, and I was in charge of the gong. So when they were about 5 or 6 paces down, then, and I should have brought the gun. Anyway, once you hit it, that note stays for the longest time, and that is also used for contemplative prayer. Is that once you don't hear the note, that's when you begin to meditate. Anyway, but yes, the labyrinth is, and it's powerful too. Yes, especially if you have the energy to walk it. Because once you get in, you got to get out. So, anyway. Anything else? If not, thank you very much.